talk about tomatoes. So I really love tomatoes. I love planting them, but when I first started, I was trying to grow the big beefsteak tomatoes, and I wasn't having any luck planting them outside. So one thing you need to know about tomatoes is tomatoes need to grow in a place that is hot. They love the sun, and it needs to be hot for a long time in order for you to get the big beef tomatoes. So I tried for so many years. I would get one little tomato, it would get green, and then by September it would start getting cold at night, and then it would die. I tried 3 years in a row, and then finally a friend said, you probably aren't getting enough hot temperature. Why don't you grow the cherry or the olive tomatoes? And she was right. Once I started growing the small cherry and olive tomatoes, I got tons of them because they didn't need as much time to grow. So we had just the right amount of temperature in July and August, and then I grew a ton. So tip number one, if you don't get enough warm temperatures, let's say over 4 months of really hot temperatures, you're probably not going to be able to grow big beef steak tomatoes. Of course, this year things have changed. So we have a greenhouse, and I decided to plant tomatoes here. So this is where I planted the tomatoes, and you can see I've already set up the support systems for them. Each of these like cages or supports is where I've planted at least a few tomato seeds. They're gonna grow super tall. These are actually pretty small comparatively, so they can grow taller than me. I'm 5 feet tall, so they're gonna need a lot of support. And it's actually, to show you quickly, you can get these little strips in like big loops at your local garden place, and these are really cool. They're Velcro, as you can hear, so you can actually wrap your plant stems or stalks around here and then secure them to any support system that you have. One side is fuzzy soft, and it keeps them supported without really cutting into them. So that's some of the best support that I recommend. In barrels, I'm growing cherry tomatoes. So those big black barrels that you see behind me, that's where I'm putting some cherry tomatoes. I think I have 3 different barrels. Yep, there's another one right behind me there. I had a friend who gave me a small wooden barrel of cherry tomatoes a few years ago, and they did really well. So I'm gonna try the cherry tomatoes in the barrels this year. So here's a quick update on the cherry tomatoes that I'm growing in barrels. So you'll notice I have 1 barrel here. They're doing really well. I did have to put the cage up on this one. There was a lot of rain a few weeks ago and they started falling over, but let's take a closer look and see. We have tons of little flowers growing, and from each of these flowers there will be a cherry tomato growing. And I'll go over to the other barrels to show you how they're doing too. So these guys here, no flowers yet, but they are growing very well as well. So in the past 9 years or so, I've grown tomatoes quite often, and I've definitely made my share of mistakes along the way. So I'm going to tell you what not to do with tomatoes. One year I decided the tomatoes had done so well the previous year that I was going to plant nothing but a bunch of tomatoes. So I planted them in rows very close to each other. So mistake number 1, don't plant tomatoes too close to each other. They're not going to do as well. Because mistake number 2 is, you'll notice there are trees near that area, and there was a tree that was kind of like overhanging the old conuco, and it had fungus on it. It was like spores on its leaves, and we didn't think to trim the branches, and the branches got too close, and during the summertime the wind blew the spores from the fungus onto my tomatoes, and then because the tomatoes were growing so closely, the fungus started spreading from leaf to leaf to leaf to leaf. The tomatoes were fine, but the problem was that the spores was infecting the branches, the leaves, the stalks, and they were drying out and dying. So obviously, as the branches, as the stalks, as the leaves got weaker, they couldn't hold up all of the tomatoes. And I was getting tons of tomatoes because they were producing really well. But because of the fungus, they started to weaken and I had to start picking them much sooner than I would have liked. So they need space, and it will prevent anything such as blight or fungal spores from spreading quickly from one to another. The other reason you don't want to grow them too close is, especially when you spray them with water, they may actually stay wetter because they don't have enough space to dry themselves out, therefore making it easier for fungi to propagate on them. So, lesson learned the hard way. If you love tomatoes, just don't grow too many too closely. Spread them out around your area. So in order to get rid of the fungus, or at least to stop it from spreading as quickly, I did buy an organic spray. It smelled like the dickens. It was all organic material, and it was basically an antifungal. So it was like a type of bacteria or something that then ate the fungus and got rid of it. So it was fighting it off. The only thing it really did was it delayed the fungal spread a little bit. So there's my tip. We'll see how the tomatoes do this year. Happy planting, everyone.